Max Verstappen sets the record for most consecutive wins. A couple teams do not show up to the Italian Grand Prix. Ferrari is not one of them. This is Into the Chicane, a Formula One podcast, the post-Italian Grand Prix edition. We are your hosts. I'm Channing Apodaca. The man across the screen is always Brandon Wood.
What up?
Before you guys get into this episode, please remember to subscribe to the YouTube channel, follow us on Instagram, follow us on TikTok, follow us on X or Twitter, depending on which era you come from. Subscribe to the Spotify and the Apple Music, wherever you get your podcasts. Please join us. It goes a long way. God damn. Was that
what a race.
Jinx. We got to run it back. We tried to do this day after the race on Labor Day. We fell into a little bit of technical difficulty, and then Daddy Wood had to go to a Labor Day barbecue. So this is the second iteration. Hopefully we still have the gusto that we had for the first time that we did this, because, man, was this a good one, huh?
Man, just altogether exciting weekend. Love how it went down, just on the edge of my seat all through the race on Sunday. Altogether, really cool weekend. Couldn't have asked for more.
Yeah, the Italians showed up. The hometown team showed up. Should we start with the good or the bad first? How do you want to do this?
Let's start with the good.
Okay. In practice, was there much to go on about practice?
The practice kind of set the tone for the weekend. You could see some of the teams that were struggling or that did struggle. It started early on practice. I know Stroll had issues with his car. Both the Alpines were having issues. But at the very start of the weekend, our man Carlos Sainz showing his speed all throughout the practice, through qualifying. It was a little tight with him and Charles, but Carlos just holding it together, showing that he's the more superior driver over there right now. And
that's been our long-standing conspiracy about whether or not who's number one over there. And fucking, dude, Carlos Sainz showed that he's not giving up the fight for who deserves that seat right now at the Scuderia. He's holding on to his shit. He topped, did he top all 3 practice sessions, or did somebody best him in one? Let me see. I really got to get this shit queued up before we get into...
So
he did.
Max was on top in the first practice, but practice 2 and practice 3, Carlos was on top qualifying. It was Carlos, Max, and then Charles in third.
Yeah. So we have a little bit of a Max sandwich to start the race, and then George Russell, P4. Good on him.
Yeah.
He beat out the straight line speed of the Williams, beat his teammate. Now, look, I'm the president of the George Russell hater fan club, right? You know this. Yeah. I believe you're the co-chair of that. But you got to give credit where credit is due. And George, he had a solid qualifying. 100% had a solid qualifying. I think he got into a little bit of a tussle in a couple of the opening laps. Like, he got close to making contact, and he came out the better man on that side. So, credit to him. Credit where credit is due. But let's really start off the race. So, Max Verstappen wins the Italian Grand Prix, sets the record for the most consecutive wins. He's followed by his teammate Sergio Perez, who does a little bit of a recovery drive, not as dramatic as we've seen him do recently, but he does get past both. Not both, but he gets past George Russell in the Mercedes, and then both of the Scarlet Ferraris to get himself P2, second place on the podium, and then followed by the Golden Boy himself, the new Golden Boy, we'll call him, man of the hour, man of the weekend, Carlos Sainz. So good on Max. Showed just how dominant he is in or out of that car, I think, because if you go back and you watch the first 20 laps of that race, maybe less, Carlos Sainz put up one hell of a motherfucking fight to hold Max back.
Yeah.
Showed the straight line speed of the Ferrari too, but he played a really great defensive game. And Max eventually gets around him, but once Max gets around him, it took him about 2 laps to be 2 or 3 seconds up. So that just goes to show how perfect Max is in that car. And it's not just the car doing all the heavy lifting. A lot is being said about, oh, he's one of the best drivers in the absolute best car. No, he's the best driver in one of the best cars, I think is a better way to put it. And it's probably the best car of the year, no doubt. But he's definitely outdriving that car. Because by the end of the race, with 4 laps to go, he's about 12 to 15 seconds up, and then he starts to let up a little bit and ends up finishing 7 seconds above his teammate. All he needed was a little bit of clean air to get to work and do what Max does. Carlos did a great job, fantastic job, keeping Max at bay for the first 15 or so laps of that race, but he had to throw the kitchen sink in order to do that, put a lot of deg on his tires, and then the rest of his race was just an all-out brawl with his teammate that really made for everything and anything we could have asked for.
Yeah, that was the best part of the whole weekend, I think, was seeing that Ferrari showdown, the last 10 laps or so of the race. Because it had all been building up to that point, right? So Carlos had his great showings in practice and in qualifying, and when it came to the race, it was really unknown how long he was going to be able to hold off Max, right?
Yeah. He did it for he went for longer than I anticipated. I thought I had bet, I forget who I was talking to. I think I was talking to Bruno, and I was like, Max passes him in turn 1. No doubt. No doubt. Max gets around him turn 1. But both the Ferraris got a good launch and just played a great team game to keep Max pinned there. He had to watch Leclerc behind him, and then Carlos did a good job holding him off. But, yeah, as soon as Max gets around, like you said, it turned into the Ferrari show.
Yeah. I mean, and then those 15 laps of Carlos having to defend, I think, hurt him a little bit. And so when he did get past, like you said, and he lost all that time, there's some people say that kind of hurt them, the Ferraris a little bit, and that they should have either swapped the cars or something to let Leclerc through, and possibly could have been able to keep Perez back there and been able to get maybe both of the Ferraris on the podium. I feel like that's kind of a tall order. It wasn't that many laps that Carlos was still out there before he came into pit. But it's a tough call. I think they did the right move.
I think in the end, like just in fairness and a show of, what do you call it? Not a show of gratitude, but just to do the right thing for Carlos, that the team did the right thing. Maybe they would have been able to get both Ferraris on the podium. They would have had to keep Checo at bay, but maybe they could have done it. You let Chuck go by. Carlos maybe loses out that spot to Checo, but maybe Leclerc's able to keep Checo behind him. Carlos pits. They rework their strategy. Carlos on new tires gets around Checo in the later stages of the race. Maybe, but like you said, tall order. But in the end, I think you have to give so much credit to Fred Vasseur, the race strategy team, Ferrari in general, everybody at Monza for just letting those two go at it.
100%.
Because you don't see that often, where you'll just, even lower teams don't want their cars racing each other. And they borderline let them go full bore. There was something that they said at the very end where it was like, I forget what they said of the radio that was like, you're allowed to race, but
no risk, but go ahead and race.
Yeah. And immediately after that, Chuck almost goes barreling straight into the back of Carlos, misses the turn, has to go into the runoff, but
they were both kind of pushing the limits there. Carlos did have a couple of moves he made under braking that were a little sketch. Charles,
but they put on a show, and that's what we're here for. And
it was great.
Yeah, you got to give Ferrari a shit ton of credit for doing that. Their home race, there's only 2 of like what I would call home races for any team, maybe 3, but I like the Red Bull Ring in Austria for Red Bull, and then Monza for Ferrari are like 2 true home races for a team. Maybe if you really want to stretch things out, you could say that Coda is Haas's home Grand Prix, but nobody really cares. I don't think it's mostly just white chicks in denim shorts and baseball jerseys.
With how legendary this track is, and with Ferrari's rich history in Formula One, there's a lot of prestige that goes into this race. So, we didn't get the 2019, Charles winning and all the glory that brought. But I think if you're a Ferrari fan, getting to see them back up on the podium and fight the way they did is really cool to see. I mean, some say that the Ferrari designs their car for this track, and because this track is sort of a standout from some of the others, you hope that this is where they really show up and show that speed and make the most of the weekend. So I think they did, considering the strength of the Red Bulls right now, and after the entire story of the season and the way it built up through the weekend, for Carlos to hold on and get that podium spot is really great. I would have been really disappointed if Charles got it ahead of him, honestly.
Yeah, it was 100% Carlos's weekend to lose things, and he held on, and I'm glad for it. Nothing against Chuck, but when you see Carlos fight the way that he did to get where he was at, and kind of just like stake his claim, not only on the team, but in F1, no matter what ends up happening with Charles Leclerc and Ferrari, if they want to stick with him and follow through on, their prodigy, or if they want to go a different route and go Charles Leclerc or go Carlos Sainz and send Chuck off somewhere else. Carlos has made his mark and just staked his claim as one of the top drivers.
Did you see what happened to Carlos after the race?
No, what happened?
He got robbed, apparently.
What?
His $500,000 Richard Miller watch got stolen. He and one of his, either like his trainer or something like that, chased the guy down.
No
and
shit.
The guy ended up getting arrested. Yeah, there's footage of him like standing like on the sidewalk, like trying to catch his breath while like somebody's like there patting him on the back, and there's like a cop there like arresting a guy, and yeah, it was like a whole thing.
Holy shit.
To top it off, not only did he bring home that podium, but he chased down a watch thief.
A would-be watch thief.
Would-be watch thief, yeah.
Damn, I didn't hear about that at all.
Yeah, good on Carlos.
Yeah. Let's talk about a little bit else that went on with the race. Poor Yuki doesn't even get to start. He leaves Liam Lawson out there to be the sole AlphaTauri driver. And he look, man, this is Liam's, is it second or third?
Second.
This was his second Grand Prix. He qualified, what was it, P13? Or was it was it P13, or was that where he finished?
No, he finished 11th. He qualified 13th, I think.
No, he qualified 12th, just behind his teammate.
Right, yeah.
Just behind his teammate, just under 0.3 of a second. Or sorry, just under 0.2 of a second behind his teammate, who doesn't start the race, and then finishes. Was it P13? Is that where he finished?
He finished P11. So
he moved
up into Yuki's spot. So.
6 seconds away from his first points, which is a pretty big gap in racing, but still. In your second Grand Prix, being the only driver for your team out there, no defense, no team play. Not that AlphaTauri is known for that or anything, but still. Good on Liam Lawson.
Yeah. Drove a clean race, had a couple nice overtakes. I don't know if you saw the one he did on the Haas. I don't know if it was Nico or what, but he had like a nice real late lunge going into turn one. Later on in the race, that was pretty good. So
I didn't. There wasn't a whole lot of camera time outside of the Ferraris.
Yeah.
And then a little bit of the McLarens got into some dust with each other, but yeah, I missed that.
But yeah, so apparently Daniel's probably not going to be back until about Qatar, so it means probably another couple races for Liam. So I think it'll be cool. We'll actually get to get a good assessment of him in the car. It won't be just like these couple weird. If it was just Zandvoort or something like that, where there's these weird circumstances, it's harder to tell, really.
Yeah.
But if he continues the next couple races with some solid performances, if he gets one that's where he's finishing ahead of Yuki, I mean.
Dude, I'm telling you, if he continues on the trajectory that he's at, it's going to be a tough decision for them to put Daniel Ricciardo back in that car. It's going to be pointless.
And before when we were still talking about what was going to happen for next year, and before the the idea that Daniel Ricciardo was going to come back and take Nick's seat, like I was saying, like let's see Liam in there. Let's see what he can do, and to see him actually getting these results is pretty cool. Makes me think they should have thought twice about.
You definitely have
Daniel in the first place.
You've been on top of the Liam Lawson train. You've been touting him, so kudos to you there.
How about we talk about the McLarens?
Yeah.
So altogether, I mean, we weren't expecting a whole lot from them this weekend. Not necessarily the greatest track for their characteristics of their car. So, we would still hoping they would show up. I don't think an 8th and a 12th was exactly where I thought that they would be. Oscar had a little bit of trouble a couple moments in the race. Obviously, I don't know what lap that was. Lap 24, going to turn 2. Lando trying to get around Oscar, and the two of them touch. Obviously, wasn't really that detrimental to their races. I don't know if Oscar maybe got some damage there, but didn't seem to be too big of a problem for them.
I think he might have taken a little bit of damage on that one. But what did you think about the I don't want to call it a wreck, but the contact in general? Like, did you think that was just a racing incident, or do you think that was like an over-aggression by one of them?
I mean, it definitely wasn't, it's a racing incident. It wasn't like anybody did anything really that wrong, but I think this also goes to my other point that I wanted to make about his contact with Hamilton. I feel like Oscar, in the position he's in right now, he should probably be a little bit more careful.
Yeah.
You got to be careful racing your teammates like that. And I think that Stella, the team principal, actually said something about how the guys were racing for themselves and not for the team this weekend, and how that was kind of not really the greatest strategy, especially when they're trying to make up points in the Constructors' Cup. So I feel like they need to kind of avoid those situations. If Lando's got way more pace than Oscar, and they need to swap cars, Oscar needs to be on that page and be, avoiding any potential problems.
I believe Lando went on the radio and said something about Oscar not having the same pace that he had and wanting to get around him too. I think it's a little bit of a rookie, mentality that Oscar's got. Maybe he's getting a little bit too gritty, trying to do some things. I don't hate it. But yeah, maybe he's got to mind his P's and Q's a little bit, because two contacts in one race is just a bad look. And both of them, I think, happened in the same corner. And that turn is very tricky. Anytime you get two drivers in there trying to make a move on each other, one of them usually has to bail out. And if they don't, that's what happens. But some of the best drivers in the world have gotten in trouble right there. I mean, he made contact with Lewis. It ended up being Lewis's fault, and I think that's the right call. But just Oscar being present there is a bad look. But then also, like, you look back to 2021, two best drivers in the world, Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton, make contact right there, and one ends up on top of the other. So it's a tricky corner.
Yeah.
But to your point, Oscar, maybe cool it. Listen to the team a little bit.
Yeah, the incident with Hamilton, I mean, Hamilton was moving up through the pack. He's on mediums. Everybody else is on hards. Oscar was defending. And, good on him for defending. He should be defending. But I think you defend to a certain point, right? Like, they were wheel to wheel down that whole straight. And then going into the corner, yes, it was Hamilton's fault, right? Like, he was totally he got the penalty and everything. Like, Oscar was in his blind spot, but Oscar, you got to avoid those kind of situations, right? Because
that's like a know when to hold him, know when to fold him type thing. Like, exactly. You're not racing with Lewis, but I can't be too mad at him. I do appreciate him wanting to hold on to the position, especially at a track like Monza where it's difficult to pass. It took Max Verstappen 15 laps to get by Carlos Sainz, so maybe Oscar thought he had a shot of holding him off.
But do you do that at the expense of points for the team, right? And you lose 3 places because of it, right? So you got to be a little more calculated with.
Sure, but it's one of those things where you might look at had he been slightly more aggressive and kept Lewis at bay and kept Lewis back, we'd be celebrating Oscar and his defensive capabilities as opposed to putting him down. Had he extended that lead for a few more laps, got a different pit window, changed up their strategy a little bit, and then ended up a few places above Lewis. It didn't work out that way, though. That's racing, Shit doesn't go right unless you're Max Verstappen, and then everything goes right because you're perfect. Who else? Let's get into some of the ugliness. Logan Sargent, I had a little bit more high hopes for him and the Williams team. I think Alex had another brilliant showing. Just, you know, still the hottest commodity in F1, I think, right now. But I thought Logan was going to have a better result, especially in that just bullet of a Williams that they're driving, that straight line speed that thing's got. But, yeah, he didn't have the best.
Yeah. You know, in an ideal world, as the season goes on, he would close that gap between him and Alex. You know, as we go on, it seems like it's going to be harder and harder for him to do. I think, especially with Alex getting regularly up in 6th, 7th place finishes. You know, I think for Logan now, it's like, man, just try to get your point, dude. Just try to get in there and get 1 point and see how you can.
I think it was even James Vowles. You know? Yeah, James Vowles said something like, Logan, that point, it has your name on it. It's coming.
Yeah.
That's a situation where he 100% can drive for himself. Him and his teammate are so far apart, they don't really have to worry about each other. You know, you're not going to see the two Williams racing against each other, so he can go out and just be as aggressive and reckless as I think he wants to be, which I wouldn't mind seeing.
I don't even think that's his problem. I think his problem is just being consistent and putting together, you know,
a complete package. Yeah.
Yeah, because I know with his qualifying time, like he looked pretty good through most of the lap, but he just couldn't get, you know, the one lap that had all of his good sectors together, right?
Yeah,
like
it was
very last one. He was a little bit behind, so he pushed a little bit harder, and then ended up going wide into the parabolica, and then that blew his whole lap. So
yeah, he went on the radio and apologized for that too. That's exactly where he lost it.
Yeah, so. He still has a lot to make up, and there's not a lot of season left, I think, for him to be able to prove that he deserves to be back next year. So
I'm still maintaining he's a baby. It's one season. He's doing the job just fine. It's like it's a B-, C+ grade, which is, unless they really have somebody lined up, you know, who's going to be a world beater.
They very well could. Very well could.
It's not Mick Schumacher, though, or whoever else.
No. I think I did see something this weekend about how there's not really any options for Mick next year. I think that's not happening anymore. So.
Honestly, you know, other than for the sake of getting the Schumacher name back in F1, I say good. Like, I don't think he had his chance. He got 2 solid seasons, and he cost Gene Haas a lot of money. I don't see him doing much better in any other car. But then again, I've never driven the Haas of the last 2 years, so who knows how much of a shitbox that thing was.
Yeah,
and it was.
I mean, you also don't know what a year out of Formula One could do for him. You know,
yeah.
Somebody like Alex, it did really well. So, and he got to spend, when Alex spent time like in that off year, just hanging out in the paddock, like in the Red Bull paddock. I think he learned a lot, and I think Mick doing the same thing at Mercedes, like could maybe learn something, and
that's true.
Would make him an asset to a team. But you know, if
that's true,
if we're not hearing grumblings that something's in the works for him, then it's probably not happening.
Yeah. I don't see anybody. There's nobody that I want to see lose their seat for a Mick Schumacher, I guess, is how I feel about that. Not that I don't want to see Mick on the grid, but I just don't want to see anybody get replaced by him. How about, what's that one team called again? The one that
Sauber?
No, they still race. The one that nobody gives a shit about. What's it? Alpine.
Alpine?
That fucking those guys. Man, what a shitbag weekend.
The team with no leader.
Yeah, no, you know, I tend to forget about them. Nobody seems to care.
Mattia Binotto was seen around the paddock though. I don't know if you saw that.
What, sipping Chianti in a?
No, well, and then there was some Netflix camera crews filming him.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So what do you think that could mean?
Oh, I mean, that kind of spells it out. I'm sure he's coming back to run that team.
Yeah, we shall see, won't we?
That'll be a nice episode. But they qualified 17th and 18th after getting a podium the week before. The roller coaster over at the team that shall not be named continues. And then Kevin Magnussen proving his contract signing completely wrong in 19th. While being outshined by his... Say that again?
He's still on his summer break.
Yeah, I mean, dude, the guy's burnt out. He's been bad all year, and then he had, loses out 6 positions to his teammate, doesn't make it into Q2, and then finishing dead last in qualifying. And I think this is the biggest disappointment of the week, and this is a bigger disappointment than Yuki Tsunoda missing out on the Italian Grand Prix for 2 out of 3 years. Lance Stroll qualifies P20.
Yeah, it was pretty rough. I mean, they had issues, like I said earlier, through practice and stuff, mostly with Lance's car. So to see him not do well in qualifying was not surprising, but to be dead last,
yeah, that's
pretty rough.
Behind a Haas, behind the struggling Alpines, behind Zhou Guanyu, who the Alfa Romeos didn't have. Good on Bottas for putting together the weekend he did, but they looked like they had absolutely no pace. Behind Logan Sargent, who fucked up his last out lap. God damn, dude. Dead last in the Aston Martin. You and I were talking yesterday. You have a theory that I'm very on board with. You want to share that with everybody?
Yeah, I feel like it's definitely been on the downhill slope this season. Especially, I've noticed maybe the last 3 or 4 races. And since we got the news, a few weeks ago or at least the rumor that Lance is thinking about a tennis career after racing, gives me the suspicion that maybe they've already told Lance that they have other plans for next year, and that he's not a part of them. And just something like that would affect his mental state to the point where he just is not even there.
Absolutely.
To show up, right? Like you see there was a clip from after the drivers meeting this weekend where they shows all the drivers coming out, and then Lance is the very, very last person who's just moseying on out, just looking at his phone, and then he just kind of looks up and it's just like, "Oh, you guys are still here?" He just seems completely checked out.
Yeah.
And these results show that. So
I think you're onto something there. I think that the team has shown, first off, they put a lot of money into the program. Lawrence Stroll himself put a lot of money into the Aston Martin program this year and for the foreseeable future. And they've shown that they can attract big-name talent that can get big-time results, like Fernando Alonso. He didn't have the greatest weekend this weekend, but they were struggling.
Yeah.
But Lance has not been able to keep up with his teammates since the beginning of the season, when I think that car was in a little bit better form. So it might have been easier for Lance to be in the top 5, top 6 around then. And we've touted Lance Stroll's ability in a good car, but once things tend to go a little bit south, he can't keep up. And I think this is an easy out for him. I think, the tennis career is a way to bow out. That was like an announcement, a pre-announcement. You know what I mean? That was a little bit of foreplay.
Soften the blow.
Exactly. Yeah. Just, chubbing us up for when they're going to drop the fact that Lance Stroll is on his own accord going to leave the team and leave the sport. When I think what it most likely came down to was the Board of Governors at Aston Martin going to Lawrence Stroll and saying, hey, there are a lot of solid options, and we are now an attractive outfit for some good drivers, and we can put ourselves not only in a top 3 fight, like we've seen this year, potentially in the future as Red Bull's, starts to lose a little bit of wind tunnel time, we can put ourselves in a championship hunt in the next few years, which is what they set out to do. When Lawrence Stroll officially took over the team, it was a 5-year plan, and I think we're 2 or 3 years into that. It's actually kind of coming to fruition, except for the fact that, baby boy just hasn't been the face of the franchise like they thought he was going to be. And I think that's for good. We need to get paid drivers a little bit on the outside. They need to remain at the Haas's, and you know what I mean?
I think they need to remain in the junior categories personally, but that's how I see it.
Stay in F2. What's that one dude? Is it Daruvula? No, it's not Daruvula. There's a dude who's been in Formula 2 for
8 years.
Yeah, I forget his name.
I know you're talking about, but I can't remember his name.
he's been there for years, and I think he's usually like middle to back of the pack, and he's just doing it for money, which, hey man, good on you. But also, like, there are sportsman series where you can just do that in a sports touring car, as opposed to taking a seat in, you know, one of the top categories like F2. What else?
I mean, as far as this weekend, the Mercedes, I was hoping for a little bit more from them. Russell had an okay showing. Lewis had to really salvage his poor. I think it was just setup issues that just plagued him throughout the weekend. But altogether, not that impressive. So,
yeah, I mean, where did George end up finishing in the race? He finishes,
fifth.
Yeah, so
Fifth,
a 5.6 for Mercedes, not terrible.
So, yeah, not terrible. I would have liked to see Lewis be able to fight towards the front a little bit more, but
it was
because I think they lucked out because the McLarens were and the Astons were so off pace this weekend that they were able to be comfortable.
Other than
5 and 6,
other than that little tussle with Oscar Piastri, I don't think both Mercedes really had much to do. There was a little bit like with Lewis and Albon. I think Lewis ended up getting past Alex at one point and then finished a few seconds ahead of him. But like George, I think, had a pretty boring solo race. Kind of just did his own thing for the majority of the race, which, again, good on him. George Russell Hater Fan Club, but credit where credit's due. He held it down, got it done.
Yeah. So, I wanted to ask you this because we talked about Max's new record, his 10-win streak. People have been very mixed feelings about this season with Red Bull's dominance. There's stats showing the viewership is down this year compared to years past. There was someone pointed out I'll say Twitter, not X. I'll say Twitter. Someone on Twitter pointed out that the post about Max winning the 10-win streak record got far less engagement than Hamilton's poll post. So the idea being that is F1 trying to force Red Bull's dominance on us? Are they trying to force us into liking this current era of Red Bull over maybe some of
what, like Lewis's dominant era?
Yeah.
I don't think so. When Lewis was on top, Lewis was everywhere. Lewis was the poster boy for F1. F1 fans know what they're getting with Max, and you either like him or you don't. And I think a lot of people just don't. They don't like his dad. They don't like his family. They don't like his kind of overall attitude a lot of the times, which I have no problems with. Max is a pit bull. He's not there for media. He's not there to play nice. He's there to set records and win championships, and that's what he's doing. He's there to win. He said it himself. He's there to win at any and all costs, and every single weekend he wants to finish on top. People don't like that. They want a little bit more of a nice guy. I think in 10 years' time, let's say Max has retired, maybe he's donated to a couple charities. I can honestly see him like literally being similar to Sebastian Vettel. I think Vettel got a lot of shit when he was younger and dominating too. Remember that whole thing, the multi-21 with Mark Webber? People thought Sebastian Vettel was a piece of shit for running his own race and not playing by team orders. And 100%. You know, Vettel had a little bit of that same perception from people. And now I don't think you can find a more celebrated driver than Sebastian Vettel. So Max Verstappen's one large donation away from, changing his entire outlook or his entire persona, his PR, whatever you want to call it. I don't think F1 is shoving Red Bull down our throats. The entire Red Bull cheats hashtag that's constantly trending, the F1 fixed. No, we're in a single team dominant era. And they're going to post about that because you have a driver setting records, breaking records, doing the impossible, and they have to report on it. They're not shoving it down our throats.
Yeah, they're just talking about, and then they're just like highlighting a great achievement, right?
Yeah,
like
we have a phenom on our hands.
To do? What are they supposed to do? Not mention it?
Yeah, there are other sports that do that way worse.
Yeah.
You know, there are other sports that have 32 teams in their league or more, and yet they only highlight one team. This is, and it's not even a team that's winning. You know what I mean? You look at the NHL, everything they talk about is the Toronto Maple Leafs. The Toronto Maple Leafs. They haven't made it past the second round in 60 fucking years, but yet they're the talk of the town. Red Bull is doing something incredible, and they're just getting articles written about them. Shut up.
Yeah, well, I mean, a lot of it is like people that...
And I know I'm wearing a Red Bull shirt. This isn't a bias, okay?
Well, they would say that it is. That you are you're part of the Max Verstappen agenda.
Yeah, shut up.
You know, it's all just very boring. You know, It's like people that have maybe been fans of F1 for a long time and were Mercedes fans, and they feel like now because their team is not doing well that they feel like it's a personal like slight against them, or like that they're not, like they feel somewhat defensive about that, and so they can't help but just think that everyone is out to get them, especially when like Mercedes is not doing well, you know, like, or like it's when it's kind of obvious that it's like it's kind of is their fault, you know, that rather than maybe saying that, oh, the Mercedes could be doing better right now. It's that, oh, well, you know, when they were dominating, everybody was so unfair to them, and that now Red Bull is doing well. They're just letting them do that. They're just letting them do it. It's just kind of, I don't know. It's just such a boring mentality.
It is. I mean, personally, I thought Mercedes was getting off with a lot of shit when they were dominant, and then, you know, if you want to say that the same thing's happening to Red Bull, then it's like, all right, well, then it's just fair, you know?
Yeah, well, that's the thing, is it's like, I don't know what it's like you don't want the FIA to, or they want the FIA to step in and stop Red Bull from being dominant. But then, like, if their team was dominant, they would get mad and say that the FIA is trying to like stop them from being dominant.
Yeah. And the FIA already has. They're, you know, about to put in that DRS rule that is strictly a Red Bull rule. We talked about that last week, but
yeah, I don't know if that's happening, but yeah, like,
but I mean, just the fact that it's been talked
as
about,
like as potential things that could happen, right? Like,
yeah,
you know why that's becoming a topic, right? And so to think that like FIA is like so set on making sure that Red Bull wins the championship for the next few years.
If anything, the FIA would be looking at their numbers, looking at the output that they get when Red Bull is doing well and going, hey, we need to stop these guys from winning. Nobody fucking likes this team. Their overseer is this curmudgeon old Darth Vader type. Their fucking team principal is this smarmy asshole dating a Spice Girl. Their top driver is a dickhead.
Yeah, has not that great of a personality. He doesn't like to do interviews.
Yeah, they're literally bad for F1 PR. If anything, the FIA and Formula One would want to stop them, but you can't. So if anything, you know, it's F1 not fixed. How about that?
Exactly.
Get that shit trending, you fucking crybabies. Get over it. Look, 2021 wasn't perfect. It had giant flaws. I would love to run it back and let things be fair.
The guy who made that mistake got fired.
Yeah.
There's no more power in the organization.
They fired him.
So I don't understand why we have to keep relitigating what happened.
And the dude who caused it is now going back to school. So he should go back to driving school is where he should go.
Seriously.
Hashtag GoTifi. Sticking with the, well, did you have anything else you wanted to cover before I just throw some bullshit at you?
Not really. There was a thing that I heard Marco said today.
That's what I was getting at.
Okay, let's do it.
Is it Lando Norris?
Mm-hmm.
So you and I have been talking about this. I've been on this train for a long time. Helmut Marko said this morning, that he is definitely a candidate for us in terms of youth and speed. He would suit us very well. Sergio, on the other hand, is already over 30 and expecting his fourth child. So he also has other interests, so you can see what happens next. There's a big rumor mill recirculating, which I don't even think it's recirculating. I think it's been constant. And maybe I'm the one who's
silly.
Yeah, maybe I'm the one who's been making it constant, because I can genuinely see a world where this happens, where Lando Norris is bought out at the end of the year from McLaren and goes directly to Red Bull. If they want to get rid of Checo this early, maybe he finishes out his contract, maybe not. But it already says right here, like in another article, Checo will only stay at Red Bull if there's an environment where he can contribute. And Perez explains why he might look for other alternatives in 2024. That's a buyout. The only way or it's a mutual termination.
Yeah.
So that means that, Checo might be looking for another seat. He might have gone, look, doesn't look like I'm winning here. You know, he kind of had his shot, and maybe he's going, maybe I'll just go be a number one somewhere else, if that's available. Could you imagine a world where a Fernando Alonso and a Sergio Perez tag team the Aston Martin? That'd be a solid duo right there.
Hey, that'd be pretty sweet, honestly. Like, Checo's, I mean, he has had his issues this year, but generally throughout his career, he's been pretty consistent. I think he could be a good teammate for Fernando.
Yeah. What do you make of the whole thing? I mean, Twitter has just lit up with this Helmut Marko Lando Norris story.
Yeah, it's usually when Marco is saying something, he's doing it for a reason.
Yeah, everything's got ulterior motives with Helmut Marko and Christian Horner.
Yeah. Whether it's not explicitly what he's saying, it could be some other reason why he's saying what he's saying. But it seems to me like that Checo's contract negotiations have kind of gone sideways a little bit, and the team is honestly considering other options, and that he kind of hasn't shown enough to guarantee himself that spot for next year, even though he does have that contract. So
when you say that their contract negotiations have gone sideways, is that contract negotiations outside of 2024?
Yeah, I mean, I think I think they're kind of, I don't know, it's hard to say when they're actually going to be renegotiating for like the year after, so, but I don't know, at least maybe not negotiations, but talks with him have kind of gone, like, I think that the team has finally like decided that, maybe
that a long-term relationship
isn't going to work out.
There.
Yeah.
I wonder if they're using like the term contract negotiations or whatever as just like team position, like where they see Checo on the team and where Checo sees himself in the foreseeable future. And whether or not, like, where they want him to be and where he wants to be going into the season next year are aligned. Because I think today is the hottest this rumor has been.
For which part? For
Checo
Lando
not
being back, or for Lando being a part of the...
For Lando coming into Red Bull.
Yeah.
I would say for Lando coming into Red Bull next year.
Yeah, I mean, even then, it's like, I think next year is kind of a tough... That seems like it's really soon for it to happen. If I feel like it would be more like a 2025 thing for Lando, but I don't know.
I mean, then the entire situation is moot, because then that's just running out the two contracts.
Yeah, I don't know.
Unless they just decide to sign Checo for a bridge deal of 1 year till Lando's contract is up. I just don't know. With everything happening at McLaren, them kind of getting their shit together, it doesn't seem to me like Lando and Oscar get along very well. I don't really see a whole lot of friendliness between the two of them. I don't see a whole lot of good team play like they rubbed this weekend. And I get the feeling that Lando doesn't want to be at McLaren much longer. If he can get in a car, even though he's going to be a number 2 driver, if he can get in a car that's capable of wins, he's going to get them. It's going to be a hard feat, because he's going to have to, or he's going to, he's going to fall victim to the Max Verstappen complex. But I think it'll be a better outcome for Lando than everybody else has had at that team.
Yeah, I mean, and I did see some of like the press they did over summer break of them like doing their little paintings of each other and them interacting, and it seems like there's not really like that much tension between them, and they get along for the most part, but it definitely seems like they keep their distance, or at least Lando is keeping his distance a little bit.
Yeah. I wonder if Lando feels like his territory has been breached a little bit with Oscar coming in and
maybe a little bit, because with Daniel, right? Like he was solidly performing better than him every weekend pretty much. So
yeah.
Oscar comes in, is like it was a big deal, his signing. There's a lot of eyes on him coming into the season, and the fact that he's been pretty consistent and in some cases doing better than Lando, he's got to be feeling a little bit insecure about his position there. So
yeah, I could see that 100%. That's my big wish, and the only reason I keep pushing it and like pushing the buyouts from both teams, if Red Bull's going to get rid of Checo, I'd rather rip the Band-Aid off because I love Checo. They're probably my two favorite drivers, and I'm talking about one swapping for the other. The only reason I'm pushing for it is just out of angst. If it's going to happen, I want it to happen already. I love a good silly season. I love good rumors, and so I just want something. I wouldn't mind seeing Checo go to McLaren, actually, because what if they just did a 1-for-1?
Would it be? That's kind of I was thinking about earlier. It would be pretty cool. It would make the negotiations a little easier, I think.
Yeah, 100%.
It makes it more likely to happen, I think. Honestly.
Yeah, because unless it's Aston Martin, where does Checo go? There's no way he goes to AlphaTauri.
No. I don't know. He doesn't have a whole lot of options. There's only 4 seats open next year, or that have not been secured confirmed next year. So,
yeah, I don't know. No say. We'll see.
Let's say. Do you want to recap our predictions?
Yeah, let's do it.
Italy. So your first prediction was an Alex Albon podium, which did not happen. Second one was Logan getting his first points. Unfortunately, did not.
Nope.
Come
I went
enough.
Williams heavy on the weekend, and kind of boned.
You had good reason to, but maybe a little too heavy. But then again, trying to make them bold. So
took a swing.
Two McLarens in the top 5. Unfortunately,
didn't happen.
We didn't even get 2 in the top 10. So
nope.
Tough. You got a big goose egg there for you. Moving to mine, I had 3 teams on the podium. Did not happen. Came close, maybe. Actually, no. I don't know. I guess George was the closest.
Yeah, well, you were one Ferrari wreck away from a 3-team podium, because had George had Carlos and Charles come together, I could still see one of them finishing on the podium, and then George Russell maybe sneaking in past the other one, but one little tap away.
Yeah, a little tippy tap. So my other 2, I had Max not on pole for after qualifying, and that did come true. God, Carlos started off his reign of the weekend as the hero for Ferrari, which was my 3rd prediction. So that's 2 points for me.
What was your exact prediction for the Carlos thing? That he would be the star of the weekend?
Just that Sainz would be the hero of Ferrari for the weekend. So,
and that's an ethereal almost, prediction where you could argue one way or the other, but you can't in this case because he absolutely was.
Yeah, you could argue he was the hero for the entire grid for the weekend.
Oh, yeah.
So I think it's pretty solid.
With the entire nation of Italy on his back.
If I don't know, can you imagine if they took each other out with 2 laps to go and they both didn't finish?
Oh man. Would it have been? I think the headline would be devastating, but at the same time, if it was like lap 51 and they went at the same time, I personally would praise them almost just as hard, just for doing it, just for going at it. Like it would be on paper a train wreck of a tragic weekend for the team. But at the same time, like this isn't a winning season for them. They had to go all out. They put their last motors for the season in the car to give them every ounce at double podium or even fucking single podium and just putting on a show, and they did it. So they lost the race, but won our hearts.
Absolutely. So I guess we should rank this, how it sits for amongst the other races for the year. For me, it's definitely top 3. I think it's got to be tough. I don't know. How are you feeling about it?
I would put this at 3. I would go Australia, Zandvoort, Monza. How do you feel about that?
Zandvoort as number 1.
Oh, did we? Sorry.
Yeah.
Zandvoort, Australia, Monza.
Got it. Okay. Cool. And then in 4th, you got Austria. 5th is Miami. 6th is Jeddah. 7, Great Britain. 8, Canada. 9, Hungary. 10, Belgium. 11, Bahrain. 12, Azerbaijan. 13th, Spain. 14th, we got Emilia-Romagna, which did not happen. And then 15th, we got Monaco, which I brought this up before, but I think we may need to relitigate this one at some point. Maybe we can, in an off week, we can talk about it.
Go back and rewatch it.
But the rewatch, because with all the rain and stuff, it kind of was a little chaotic. It was not quite Zandvoort chaotic, but it was a little bit more exciting than I think.
It was fun. I can't keep giving Monaco a pass. Maybe we'll revisit this towards the end of the season.
We'll get in. Yeah, we'll get into it. Yeah.
All right, and then do you want to do the tiniest fantasy recap and then wrap this bitch?
Oh yeah, honestly, you know what's really funny is I haven't looked at fantasy.
Really?
Basically since Zandvoort. Like I went into this weekend, I was like, you know what? My team's probably like the McLarens are probably going to be the weak point, but you know what? I don't know who else.
Yeah,
to swap them for. So I was like, I just let it roll, and I didn't make any changes. And to be honest, I didn't even see what the results were. So
I didn't look either. The past 2 weeks, I forgot to change shit, or maybe I might have changed for Zandvoort. I did change for Zandvoort, and then I ended up having the exact same team as you. And you haven't changed in 2 weeks. So all I have to do is copy your team for the remainder of the season as best as I can, just to stay ahead of you.
Fine, yeah.
And just ride the wave. But as it stands right now, Incident myself is in 1st. Porpoise Powertrains, that's you in 2nd. Susie Wolf Stan Account in 3rd. Strolling with my homies in 4th. J Money in 5th. Let's Go Full Throttle moves up to 6th. Church of Czech Hose down in 7th. And KJ plays Lance Stroll for the 14th weekend in a row.
Oof.
Is that it?
So how much did I lose this? Oh, what did we get?
We stayed stagnant. I'm up on you by not a whole lot. I'm up on you by, let's do the math.
Wait, how much?
24 plus 20.
How much
24.
did you?
I'm up by 45 points.
Okay, let me see. I'm trying to see what the points were for Italy. Oh, so we tied. Okay.
Yeah.
So we're just still, okay, I got it.
We're a race away.
Well, all right. So I don't know. I'm gonna have to pull. Have you even played your like 3X or anything like that yet?
Nope.
Yeah.
You have, right?
Yeah, I played it once. So
the only chip I've played is the late entry or whatever, where I was able to make like some final fix, they call it. I was able to make a fix after qualifying. And we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8 races left in the season for me to choose. And it might come down to me playing that 3X in Abu Dhabi and just hoping that it goes well, because what I've been doing, my strategy hasn't been a secret. I'm waiting for Max to get a power grid penalty, or not a power grid, a power unit penalty, play my 3X on him, and just watch him climb through. Maybe that'll happen somewhere around the United States or Mexico, maybe Brazil. Brazil would be a good one for them to change his power unit at because you know he's going to be dominant there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's an easier track to pass on to, I think. So
yeah, it's a lot wider.
For him to do.
A lot of big swooping turns. So we'll see.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm gonna have to start throwing some curveballs here, like the last 5-6 races of the year. But
I just have to bring it home.
To that because last year I started doing that when I was down. I was trying to catch back up, and it backfired on me. So
yeah,
we'll see. I don't know.
It was also a lot tighter.
I gotta think smart this year.
The league was a lot tighter last year. Like points wise, I felt like you could have jumped up and down a whole lot more. I started off the season last year, first like 5 or so races in first, and then just tanked. But there's a pretty big gap between the top 3 and everybody else. You basically miss out on an entire race.
I've been waiting for you to fall off, but it hasn't happened because you've been just copying me every week.
Well, I'm not copying you, but we've sort of, because we kind of have our finger on the pulse a little bit more, we're playing just better odds instead of taking gambles the way that everybody else does. So we end up having very similar teams. So when one thing doesn't go right for one of us, it tends to not go right for the other one as well. So we're kind of just like at odds with each other. Anyway, we will be back in, about a week or so? Maybe we'll do some updates, see what goes on in the world of F1. But the Singapore Grand Prix is September 17th. That is 11 days from now, so we have a weekend off. We'll check back in with you guys, do the pre-Singapore Grand Prix, give some bold predictions, and that's about it.
Yes, sir.
This has been Into the Chicane, a Formula One podcast, the post-Italian Grand Prix edition. Peace.
Peace.